Committee is now called to order. Madam Clerk, if you could please read our opening remarks.
Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left or right front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, security will direct everyone down 9th Street to the assembly area located inside the former public safety building parking lot. Able persons should assist visually in hearing impaired visitors were exiting the building. Public speaker guidelines. Individuals wishing to speak during public hearings and the public comment period are generally allowed 3 minutes to speak. Persons appearing before the committee are not allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person, including comments directed at public officials or staff members that are not related to their official duties, or address the question staff members directly. All questions are to be directed to the committee chair. Failure to adhere to the guidelines may result in speakers forfeiting any remaining time and further disciplinary action as necessary, which could include barring from attendance at future meetings of the committee for a period of 6 months. Members of the public who registered in advance to speak virtually will be called at the appropriate time, either during public comment period or during the public hearing for the legislation on which they sign up to address. And Madam Chair, all members of the committee are in attendance today, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Public comment is now open. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this committee regarding items not on today's agenda? Madam Chair, seeing none and no one signed up to speak virtually before the 10 a.m. deadline, the public comment period is now closed and back to the committee.
Thank you so much. So let's move on to approval of minutes. We've got quite
The minutes to be approved are for May 28th, June 11th, July 23rd, and September 24th, 2025 for the Governmental Operations Committee meeting. If there are no amendments or corrections, then the meetings will stand approved as presented. Those minutes have been approved. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then just as a reminder to everyone, normally governmental operations starts with presentations and then moves on to papers for consideration. Because we had really robust and wonderful conversations in our last meeting, unfortunately, we ran out of time on some of our papers. At this meeting, we are reversing the order and starting with those papers that we didn't get to and ending with presentations. Madam Clerk, can you please read the first paper for consideration?
Item 1, Ordinance 2025-209 to amend City Code concerning the filing of statements of economic interest for requiring more detailed disclosure forms of boards and commissions with the power to issue bonds or expend funds in excess of $10,000 in any fiscal year. That paper is before the committee.
Thank you. Would the patron like to introduce this paper?
Thank you. So this paper, the objective of it is to consider the ways to address potential conflicts of interest for folks that are to serve on those commissions and boards that make some more substantial financial decisions. And so the end result or the goal is, or the intent is that once they have been appointed, that they would provide the complete statement of economic interest, which is the same document that elected officials complete when annually and when running for public office, to essentially disclose that information. We have been making some amendments to the paper to address, for one, an incorrect date, and also in terms of the scope of the folks that those commissions that this would apply to. And that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you. And are you ready? I have on a sort of a readout that says to be continued, but I don't know if that was a typo. Are we taking it up today or continuing it? It says to be continued. Might just be technical.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Ms. Gibson is working on an amendment for this paper, so I believe her intent may be to ask that this be continued.
Yeah, okay, so I wasn't sure, I'm sorry, where we're at with the amendments. So yes, we're finalizing those amendments and then we'll continue it so that we can reintroduce it once the amendments are final.
Okay, great. So Madam Clerk, at this point, should we do a motion to continue or do we still do a public hearing?
No public hearing is necessary, Madam Chair, just a motion.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
The committee is
Second.
voting on the motion to continue ordinance 2025-209 to the next Governmental Operations Standing Committee meeting. Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abubakar?
Aye.
Chair Jordan?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you. Can we please continue to the next ordinance?
Okay, Madam Chair, are we trying item 2 and 4 as a block?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Ms. Gibson, would you like to introduce? I think,
I have to read them. I'm going to read them.
oh, you're going to read them first?
Yes.
Please. Yes, thank you.
Okay. To amend city code concerning definitions related. This is item 2, ordinance 2025-210. To amend city code concerning definitions related to open data and a transparency program by adding therein a new section concerning a Freedom of Information Act for the purpose of establishing an online Freedom of Information Act library. And item 4, to amend city code concerning definitions related to open data and a transparency program. To amend of the city code by adding therein a new section concerning a Freedom of Information Act request library for the purpose of establishing an online Freedom of Information Act library. Those papers are before the committee.
Thank you so much. We don't usually have papers taken in a block. I know when we do public comment, we'll do it as a block of public comment, the way we did the tax paper. But Madam Clerk, can you remind me, are we going to be starting with the patrons introducing their papers, or and when do we have we have some special guests that are going to be speaking?
Yes, the patrons can introduce, and it will be one public hearing for both items.
Ms. Gibson, would you like to introduce your paper?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the objective of ordinance 2025-210 is to take a step in making the city more transparent. And by doing so, we would essentially have the establishment of the Freedom of Information Act Library, which would essentially publish both the requests, the amount to complete those requests, and then the provided information based on a ordinance or rubric which is defined in the paper. The Freedom of Information Act essentially directs directs government bodies to ensure that information of public interest is available to the public and easily accessible. Hearing some of we discussed this paper in our last meeting, and in order to address some of the feedback on that paper, there are amendments to the paper to more narrowly define the documentation or records, if you will, that would be included in the library. That would address the volume of requests that would be included, as well as provide additional exemptions for any concerns in terms of scope. I think that we have Ms. Megan Ryan who will be speaking, and she can provide, I think, additional testimony on the paper. But essentially, the objective here is to say, once information is released to any member of the public, it's accessible to all. That is the goal.
Thank you. And would administration like to introduce their paper, and then we'll have the joint public hearing and then bring it back for discussion? And I know we also have I think we did the Just FOIA is going to be at OD, but.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. I am Ross Gatro. I am the Director of Communications here for the wonderful city of Richmond. Is that good? Are we good? All right, here we are, FOIA library. We talked about this last committee meeting last month, and so just really super quick to recap some of the stuff, how we at the City of Richmond and the administration treat FOIA requests. Super important to us. It's a big deal. We treat it very seriously, and our biggest thing here is we treat the requesters with respect and impartiality, regardless of the size and scope of the request. So whoever you are, whatever you're asking for, we want you to feel like you're a customer of us, and like the CAO says, white glove service. We always offer to the requesters the option to modify or refine their requests to reduce the costs. So if you ask for something with no date range, that can be very expensive, and we'll work with them to refine the date range to something that just addresses what they're asking for to reduce the cost to both the staff and the public. We don't charge for records that are publicly available already, and we don't charge for records that were previously released. And we try to conduct good, thorough, good faith searches for all the relevant records. Julia Holmes, who's sitting behind me, is our FOIA manager, and she is wonderful. We've talked a little bit about other FOIA libraries in the Commonwealth. We got Newport News, which is similar to what we're shooting for here. They have a large set of exemptions. Ambulance, fire, human services, police aren't included, but they also selectively include things that have redactions. So you're still not getting everything in the Newport News FOIA library that's even outside of those agencies. Virginia Beach just posts sort of 8 specific requests to their website, and Norfolk doesn't even have one. Okay. All right, these are the amendments from Councilmember Gibson exempting these agencies, 1, 2, 3, 4, Richmond Police Department, Richmond Fire Department, Department of Social Services, Department of Emergency Communications Preparedness and Response, and then some tweaks on how we define minors and attorneys, like how do they fall in the exemptions. The main point on this slide, though, is this set of 4 agencies here represent about 73% of the total FOIA requests we've gotten in the last couple months. We're doing a much better job of tracking our FOIA basically since Julia's gotten here. And so this is the most recent data we have. So we estimate we get about 5,500 requests across the whole year. And so somewhere around 3/4 of those are contained in these 4 agencies, which would be entirely exempted in the proposed amended 225-210, including police, which I think there's a lot of public interest in these 4 departments specifically, and so they would be completely exempted. And there's a lot of questions. I think we have a lot of questions. We discussed a lot of questions last time about what posting every single request to the website would mean. And so I think this is by far not a comprehensive or complete list of our concerns or questions, but this is 3 big buckets that I think things fall into that I wanted to talk about today. First, was just sort of mentioned that with the proposed exempted agencies, we'd be excluding 3/4 of all FOIA requests, including from some pretty big agencies like police and fire and social services. There's great reasons to exclude some of the records that are requested from these departments, but perhaps not a blanket exemption. And actually, we've thought about it and done a little bit of number crunching back of the ordinance math, and I think we would end up posting more records to the FOIA library under the agent or the administration's rubric 2025-240 than we would with these blanket exemptions, just because the sheer bulk of requests come in most of these 4 agencies. Middle bucket here in orange, I still think like one of the big reasons to exempt those agencies is FOIA requests involving children or sensitive subject where people are victims of things. I think those 4 agencies contain a lot of that, but there's also agencies that still deal with children like Parks and Rec, and then our Office of Immigration and Refugee Engagement has even just their list of clients could be sensitive information that we would want to be just really thoughtful about how we release to the public at large. And then what we're calling weaponized FOIAs, this is bad faith requests where the request returns no responsive records, and the request only exists just so the text of the request would be published, like Ross Catro, all emails in which Ross Catro hates Francine the Lowe's cat. Like that would be no responsive records because I love Francine, but it would be published as a potential request in the library. So FOIA is super duper complex. That is what I have learned working at the city. We almost daily encounter interesting and new FOIA scenarios where we're working through, like, how does this work? How do we get the requester what they need, and what is a responsive record? And rules, like, there's a lot of rules about that apply to the requester that don't apply to the public at large. It depends on who the requester is. So it's very subtle. It's very challenging. And I think it would be challenging to legislate a thoughtful rubric today that would be adaptable for years to come. So what the administration has proposed is Ordinance 2025-240, which you can see here. The gist is the administration would publish the rubric they were using. So if it changed, we'd put the new one up there. And we would post everything that met the rubric into our FOIA library. And I think it's really important to remember that we're not talking about keeping any FOIA applicable information from the public. This is just for the FOIA library, right? Like, any person can still submit a FOIA request and get those requests. As the council member said at the beginning, this is about requests that one person gets being made available to all people. So none of this changes how we deal with FOIA on the day-to-day. It's just about what goes into our library. And here's our actual proposed rubric. And again, it's proposed, but these are the things on the left in green that we would post, requests requested by 2 or more requesters. And most of those are media inquiries from our friends over here in the gallery, where we get multiple media agencies requesting the same thing. So anytime that happened, whether it be the Richmonder or the Richmond Times-Dispatch or Style Weekly, we would post those multiple requests, the response, the request, the cost, the requester into the library. Anything of public interest and anything central to government operational accountability. Things we would not post would be records with strong privacy or security, confidential information that could endanger people. Basically, we're trying to prevent harm by releasing what normally would be a one-to-one information release into a one to, like, infinity, the public at large. So don't want to post those. And any records where redaction is insufficient to protect from misuse. A lot of these, we would, like, redact a victim's name, but there's maybe family members or friend group member names that are in there that would allow someone who wanted to misuse this record to do a lot of triangulation and easily figure out, like, the information they were trying to figure out. So we're really trying to get the most information possible out to the public while doing the least amount of harm and doing it for the least amount of cost. And we estimate that the fiscal impact of 2025-240 to be 0, because the set of things that would go into our public FOIA library that we would need an extra set of eyes on already have an extra set of eyes, because most of these things, the media requests, the public interest requests, sort of like the spicy requests, already go through our FOIA manager. She's already looking at those, and so we wouldn't need an additional set of eyes. With the council members' amended ordinance, like I said, it exempts about 75% of the requests. So I think we can take away about 75% of the costs. The previous estimated fiscal impact for the previous version of the ordinance was 3 FOIA librarians. So with the new exempted agencies, I think we get to 1 FOIA librarian. But again, under the rubric, all of the stuff that would be going into the FOIA library would be already double checked by our FOIA manager. So to close, 2025-240 allows for nuanced and thoughtful implementation that minimizes harm and unintended consequences while still allowing the most of what we can get out into the public, making it easy, making it less cost and accessible for folks. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, well, I think at this stage, we will go to public comment, and then we will have our guest expert on open government. Thank you, Mr. Catro. Madam Clerk, can you open public comment? And again, just everyone, you're welcome to speak to either paper. Time will be 3 minutes.
Is there anyone in the chamber who wishes to speak in opposition to this paper? Is there anyone in the chamber?
Madam Clerk, I think we will, because we're doing it as a block, we'll let them speak once to this topic in favor of the paper that they want us to support, and they can include reasons why they're choosing that paper versus another. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Sean, and I'm a member of Richmond DSA. I'm here today to speak in favor of Councilmember Gibson's proposal for the FOIA library and against the administration's. It is pretty obvious that the trust in our city government is at an all-time low. After all, it was subtext in most of the campaign promises this last cycle. The foundational way you fix things is by improving transparency, by pulling back the curtain and allowing your constituents an unfiltered view into the dealings and processes we hold up. Many of you and the mayor ran on improving transparency and correcting the mistakes of the Stoney administration. Today is your first test into truly doing so. When comparing the two options before us, only one resolution is actually committed to doing that. Gibson's resolution creates clear guidelines around what can and cannot be stored in the library, as well as Sue's concerns around privacy that the administration requested to be added. It handles the grossly understaffing issue that has frustrated anyone who has had the displeasure of filing a FOIA. It adds transparency around requests that go unanswered, an accusation alleged against the city in a whistleblower lawsuit, and a common practice nationwide. Lastly, it reduces effectiveness of weaponizing FOIA price estimations to deter investigations into certain subjects, another accusation currently alleged against the city and similarly common practice across the Commonwealth and nation. The mayor's proposal would similarly improve convenience, but only for very specific cases, the criteria for which is completely unknown. It talks about a mysterious and moving rubric that will be decided at a later date. It claims that only what is within a vague classification of public interest or central to government agency accountability that apparently the administration gets to decide will appear in the library. The ability of the administration to abstract and obfuscate FOIAs from the library requests at their discretion is the crux of this issue. It's what the Stoney administration allegedly did. It's what I've personally experienced on numerous occasions and completely defeats the purpose of the Freedom of Information Act. A better and cheaper way to hide illegal and embarrassing scandals is to simply not commit them in the first place. As a quick aside, the implication that the mayor's proposal is free is just laughable. With how understaffed departments are for FOIAs already and how adding moving goalposts to what can be entered into the library would make things significantly more complex, definitely would, in good faith interpretation, require at least the same number of librarians as Gibson's. It is just disappointing dishonesty and budgetary fear-mongering on full display. I would also like to point out that the budgeted amount for these librarians is significantly less than the currently ongoing or any future lawsuits that could be levied for failing to follow state law regarding FOIAs. Lastly, FOIAs are not a weapon or liability. Weaponized FOIAs are simply a boogeyman. FOIAs are an accountability measure to keep the city from doing illegal or discriminatory practices, which are in fact a ginormous liability. Radical change is needed to win back the public trust. Keeping things business as usual is simply unacceptable.
Can you repeat your name for the record once more, please, sir?
Sean Kassar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Quentin Robbins. I am the chair of Richmond for All. So we got two papers in front of us, and I think we somehow are having a conversation about efficiency or effectiveness or liability, when this is foundationally a question about discretion and who gets to make it. As I said last time, our organization is very supportive of the Gibson FOIA Library, primarily because it removes discretion from the administration in determining what information that already belongs to the public gets released to them. I think, that really does need to be the center of the conversation. This is not some abstract efficiency conversation. It's a political question, and it's about who gets to decide. The way that the Gibson paper is structured, it allows us to decide, the people. It takes that away from government to decide which documents that already belong to us get released to the public. I can put in a FOIA request. I can pay for that FOIA request with the knowledge that everyone will get that knowledge. The other component of this is this cost piece or the exemption piece. The original paper did not have departmental exceptions. It seems sort of silly that there's no cost to a much more complicated system that the administration is putting forward. And then when a good faith attempt to reduce costs is put forward, it's sort of called out as issueless. Yeah, I think that's all I got for you on this one, but really appreciate it and support the Gibson FOIA Library.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice President, members of the council. My name is David Mayer. I live in Sherwood Park, represented by Councilmember Gibson, formerly by Councilmember Jordan. I want to speak today about what I hope is the overall approach the city takes to these issues. Since I have limited time, my words are going to be a little blunt, and I certainly mean no offense or disrespect. I moved to Richmond from Portland, Oregon 12 years ago. I'm a come here. And I would like to share my impressions of the town. And I'm not being critical or condescending, just my impressions. And when I arrived, on more than one occasion, if a person asked me how I liked it here, it was accompanied by this almost instinctive protective crouch, expecting me to badmouth the place. As if there was this community inferiority complex. I know this place isn't so good, but I hope you won't notice. And I have to tell you that my impression of Richmond city government is that it is either filled with corruption or incompetence or both. From the meals tax to the water system to the tax rebates to the discovered fund used to pay someone wronged by the Richmond law enforcement community to the failure to use affordable housing funds designated for the purpose and a whole lot more. The city leaves the impression that it is corrupt or incompetent or both. And you all know that they are there. Why in God's green earth does it take 6 months to get a building permit issued? Some cities do it in 6 weeks or less. Why can't Richmond? My sense of the city is, when it comes to transparency, that it instinctively curls back into the same protective crouch of assumed inferiority and hopes that people won't notice. The problem of corruption and or incompetence has been decades in the making. It is in the seams and sinews of the organization, and it is not easily fixed. But a city council that has as its first and prime directive not to be corrupt, not to be incompetent, must, first and foremost, actively seek transparency. It would be impossible for any one of you to know all of the problems there are in city government. And an open and transparent government will allow the whole process to be crowdsourced. If the press and the people can have access to all of the FOIA responses of the city, then many can be involved in helping the city to find the areas that are corrupt and incompetent. And I urge that this committee and the council not see these mistakes as problems as a vector for criticism. Please see them as opportunities to fix the problems that have plagued the city government for decades. Be proactive in responding to mistakes, incompetencies, and yes, corruption. Welcome transparency. It is your friend.
30 seconds.
It will allow you to rise above and to take action to fix what's wrong with city government, which is, after all, why you are here. Thanks for your time to speak today.
Is there anyone else in the chambers that would like to speak to these two papers? Madam Clerk, is there anyone online?
No, there is no one online today, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have one more individual that came down to speak. Yeah, is Ms. Ryan here or online?
Yes, she is online.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Ms. Gibson, you can introduce our special subject matter expert. And then we will bring it back to committee for discussion.
Thank you. So yes, I would like to introduce Megan Ryan, who is the Executive Director for the Virginia Coalition for Open Government, essentially our state-wide expert in all matters related to FOIA and government transparency.
And is it okay?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to speak on this. As Councilmember Gibson said, I'm the director of the Virginia Coalition for Open Government. We're a nonpartisan and nonprofit organization that's dedicated to advancing the public's right to know, primarily through the Freedom of Information Act. We're actually going to be celebrating our 30th anniversary next year, and I've had the privilege of being involved with this organization in some manner for 27 of those years. So I've seen FOIA evolve from a paper-only world to one where a majority of the requests made these days involve emails and text messages. The purpose of FOIA has not changed in that time, though. The purpose, as laid out in the policy statement of the Act, is to give the people of the Commonwealth ready access to public records. The policy statement also reminds us that its provisions are to be liberally construed to promote an increased awareness of governmental activities. Why? Because at all times, the public is to be the beneficiary of any action taken at any level of government. All those are quotes from the policy statement. And I start with that policy statement because it talks about access to public records, to beneficiaries of any action, of governmental activities. It doesn't break down the need or the right for access in terms of frequency, public interest, or centrality to operational accountability, as the rubric proposed in paper 240 does. The rubric claims to be more transparent than the FOIA library proposed by the 210 paper because it would post records from more agencies. And while that may sound like progress, it falls into the classic trap of misunderstanding what transparency truly means. When government says it's being transparent, it is often congratulating itself for proactively disclosing information it has chosen for the public to know. But true transparency, and what we ask for through FOIA, is when we as citizens gain access to the information that we have decided is important to us. We get to decide. The administration's presentation says that we should trust the FOIA experts, and we do, or I do. They are skilled and well-informed. But FOIA's promise is not fulfilled when government decides what information is worthy of wider dissemination. What exactly counts as information in the public interest? Are today's determinations final, even if tomorrow they prove crucial to public understanding? This approach also overlooks the fact that something seemingly individual today can easily become a public matter once it's shared. Paper 240 also expresses concern about what will happen to records once they're posted. But it's important to remember that these records have already been released publicly through the original FOIA request. During that process, the records would have been reviewed for exemptions or prohibitions for release. Anything not exempt would have been released to the public. That might mean an individual or a journalist, a lawyer, an advocate, or a business. But once released, the government no longer controls what happens next. Those records could appear on the evening news or the front page of the newspaper, YouTube and TikTok videos, or even handed out at a flying squirrels game. The administration seems to assume that if something isn't posted in the FOIA library, it can somehow remain less public. But that's simply not how information works once it's released. Officials have also raised fears about threats to the safety of children or individuals, but those concerns should have already been addressed in the original FOIA process. For example, information about children in Parks and Rec programs that the administration mentions, there's already an exemption specifically for that. It's 2.2-3705.721. Privacy and safety concerns are also woven throughout FOIA and other laws, and FOIA officers already apply those exemptions when reviewing requests. If we are to trust their expertise, we can trust that those protections are in place before any record is released, let alone posted to the library. There's also the familiar worry about the weaponization of FOIA. That concern has existed as long as FOIA itself. Yes, someone might misuse public records to embarrass a neighbor, and yes, that kind of thing already happens every day on social media. But what the public worries about is something much larger, and that's that records might be withheld from the library or never posted at all to avoid embarrassing a government employee or the government itself. Finally, a word about cost. The administration estimates one full-time employee would be needed to filter out the 73% of the amendments requests that the amendments address and to post everything else. Yet it also says no extra staff would be needed to review all 5,500 requests, first to identify overlaps, second to determine what's in the public interest, third to assess operational accountability, and then to ensure that redactions are sufficient enough to protect safety or security. That sounds to me like perhaps even more work, not less, but either way, the cost of each proposal should be the same. I believe Richmond could lead the way in establishing true transparency by adopting Paper 210. If challenges arise, those dreaded unintended consequences, the policy can always be adjusted. But if the step proves successful, there's great potential to expand it to those other departments initially that are being withheld under the amendments, and eventually even to other cities, counties, towns, or school systems across Virginia. You have the opportunity to be a real vanguard. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them, but otherwise, again, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us today. Let's bring the discussion back to the body. Do we have any questions, comments?
I would love if Mr. Cottrell has any response to the testimony provided by Ms. Ryan.
Yeah, sure. Are there specifics you'd like me to address?
I mean, sure. I think some of the points that I think are particularly important to emphasize are the concerns about the minors, the cost. I am aware of the existing FOIA requirements and exemptions that allow information to be exempt, particularly in my role on the school board. Very familiar with FERPA law and other requirements that ensure the protection of children. And so, frankly, I was disappointed to see the presentation highlight concern about children that I don't believe is an accurate reflection of how FOIA currently works. And so I'm trying to understand why that point was emphasized, given the legal reality and the testimony provided.
Yeah, to address costs, I think there was a little bit of conflation in the testimony between FOIA, like our FOIA duties, and the FOIA library. So I just want to be super, super clear that we're not suggesting that we filter FOIA requests writ large. This is just for the library. We're also not suggesting that if we were to do Paper 210, we're not filtering the exempted agencies. No one's looking at the 73% of records because they're exempt. So we don't need to look at those again. What we need to look at them for is added risk to the city. We are changing the distribution information from, again, 1 to 1 to 1 to infinity. And I think it is naive to say that that's the same. Like, those two things are not different. Those two things are very different. When we're giving records to one person versus putting it on the internet, I understand that like a person could post it to the internet, like that's true, but it is very different for us to proactively post the records to a one-to-many relationship. So yeah, so I think for costs, like it is about risk to the city. It's about reviewing everything that we end up posting to the public. That's why we're going to need the one person. For Julia, she's already reviewing the spiciest requests that would be included in the rubric. All right, that wasn't very clear.
No, it wasn't clear. Unfortunately, it didn't answer the question. So the administration has highlighted a concern that the paper, as it stands to the FOIA library, might disclose information about minors.
Yeah, sorry, you
But
had two
as
questions.
has
You had
been
minors.
highlighted, right, legally, that information is already exempt and therefore would not be in the library in either paper. And so I'm trying to understand why that was identified as a possible reason. Going back to the cost, which I think is what your point was getting to, and I'm also unclear why there is the argument that the paper that has fewer records in the library would cost more.
Yeah, sorry, that was what I was trying to get at before, is the administration's rubric, all of this, the 3 points, multiple requests, which are mostly media, public interest, which are, again, a lot of the times media, but not always. A lot of the public interest ones often span multiple departments, and those go through our FOIA manager as well. And the accountability stuff is sort of similar. The higher profile requests for us go through our FOIA manager, and she acts as those second set of eyes already. So while there would be more records, they're already today getting that second set of eyes. For the council members' paper, this would be every request outside of those 4 agencies. So while it's a fewer number of requests, it will require more review that's not happening today. Because we need that additional layer of review when we broadcast these records to the whole world. Is that a little bit better?
No, but that's okay.
I'm happy to, please.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that ultimately the big difference between the 2 papers is the notion of discretion. And so ultimately, I think that if I'm following, that the city is asserting that we should trust the folks that are doing this in City Hall, right? And I think that the points emphasized by the public and the objective of this paper is that City Hall earns the trust through being more transparent. And so I think that the concern is that and again, the difference between the 2 papers is that the discretion is necessary and free, versus not having the discretion is a problem, despite all of the other protections that the law already provides. And so, I'm not sure. I think at the end of the day, this is a discussion about discretion. And ultimately, my belief is that the paper that's been put forth by the administration doesn't need to be a paper. And I think you would agree, right? I mean, we currently have a website with information on it, right? I mean, you can go to the website, and if you want to see information about the budget, there's some budget documentation there. Not everything, but some budget documentation. If you want to learn about Parks and Rec, there's some Parks and Rec information on the website. And there's not a paper that defines, the full scope of everything that's informational on the website. In this paper, too, it is also very discretionary. So, like, if the paper that I introduced did not pass, the city can still essentially create a FOIA library, much like your team did with the FOIA reading room with the water crisis, which is available as an informational piece of information on the website today. It could exist, right? Like, there's nothing to say we can't provide information. So the concern I have with the paper is that the suggestion is that this alternate paper is a move towards codifying transparency, when in reality, we don't need to have this code in order for us to put some information available online. We already do that today. And B, essentially what we would be doing is codifying discretion, which is contrary to what the objective of the paper is, which is to provide more transparency. I'm not sure what the appropriate response to that is, but I, would welcome your feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. I think we absolutely need an ordinance like this. We need to codify the existence of a FOIA library. It's really important. It's important to me personally. I've been working on it since I got here last summer. I worked on it with the previous CAO and the previous mayor's office. Like, I think that this is really, really important that we do. And I'm actually pretty stoked that you've introduced legislation to create and codify the existence of the FOIA library. I think that's really great. And to poorly quote the CAO, it's like less about the what and more about the how, right? He says it much better. But so I love this, and I think we need it. I just want to, we all just want to make sure that we're minimizing harm while also fulfilling what we're both looking for, is an increase in transparency, increase in ease of access, and reduction of costs.
But here's the question though: why is it that the press release that the administration released included a rubric, but the actual ordinance that's introduced does not?
Yeah, one of the previous slides, I think it's to create to codify the library and give us room to adjust and adapt as new situations arise. Like I said, like daily we're encountering new and interesting FOIA situations. There's a FOIA council which exists to address folks' new and interesting FOIA situations. And so it's very complex, it's very subtle, and we're extremely concerned about the unintended consequences, I know, and the unintentional harm that we could be doing by releasing some of these records for situations that we haven't envisioned.
Right. So the public, though, I mean, basically, it's a moving target. So we agree. I mean, in the paper that you've introduced, it's essentially a moving target.
I think we could update the rubric. We will always publish a rubric. That's part of the administration's ordinance. We'll always be very public, very transparent, and very clear with the public about what goes in the library.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just ask a clarifying question.
Yeah.
All right. On slide 8, you're quoting, I believe the way it's written, you're quoting the Code of Virginia that says, meet the guidelines of a published rubric. So is that a thing, across the Commonwealth? And what?
No, sorry. No, I think that code section there is the Virginia Freedom of Act code.
Okay, so I guess just my question is, staying on the topic of the rubric and how it's developed and how often it's updated. I mean, what is the precedent for that rubric in other localities?
Yeah, we took the impetus for our rubric comes from the federal government, has several FOIA reading rooms, and we took a lot of the basis for our rubric from what the federal government does.
And how often do they update their rubric?
I'm not sure I can find out though.
Yeah, I just have a few questions. Again, I think data is important in this conversation. And I do want to name that I think both ordinances are, as we're saying, trying to get to something. I think that the how is important in this. So one, just in terms of, and this, I know you'll have to follow up on this, but, and I would love it to be actually followed up on, is like the number of weaponized requests, like as you define that, how many of those annually you're getting. Again, Director Vincent puts a really good way of like creating speed mitigation for the 5%. Like, I want to make sure we're not creating laws for the minority of problematic cases. So having that information would be helpful.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
These don't exist today. I think the concern is when we're publishing the request, because that's part of both ordinances, is you publish the request, the requester, and
the number of records
the number of records and the cost. So this would be in the long list. Like if you went and you searched Ross Catro in the FOIA library and someone submitted a request of emails for where Ross Catro hates Francine, you would get a list. Ross Catro hates Francine, 0 records submitted by this person. And the concern is it implies that there was something someone was looking for. And the Francine example is a silly example, but when we start talking about sexual harassment or violence, like those implications on a bad faith FOIA request, I think are concerning.
But we don't have any, that is not a precedent today.
No, because we're not publishing them to the world at large. Like if someone did that, if someone sent in a bad faith FOIA request to us today, we would say no records, and that conversation would not leave that email chain. This would now be a large conversation with the public.
I believe the question is, are you getting bad faith FOIA requests now?
Yes.
Like the ones we talked about, like Ross Catro hates Francine.
Yeah. I would like to know if you are getting bad faith requests right now, like what that percentage of the overall request that is. Are you getting those?
Not in the way in which I described. We do get FOIA requests, I think, that are designed less for the exposure of information and more to create work for the city. But like, no, not in the way in which I described. It is a concern that I have when we create a list of the requests for the public, that will be something that'll happen.
Okay, I guess I worry about legislating for some, like anticipating, a bad actors when there's been no precedent for that to date. And the same would go for the number of zero records requests, which I think goes back to the Ross Catro hates Francine thing, which you're probably going to have some of those now, since you've said it like 20 times today.
Now there is actually a responsive request, right?
Yeah, now there is. I want this to work. I want this to work for the people. I think another a thing that Councilmember Gibson has said, and I think Chair Jordan has sort of also touched on it, is this aspect of the rubric itself. The rubric as it's currently written, wanting more in terms of objectivity. I think we need to flesh out what for in the public interest means. And I think we need to flesh out what government accountability and efficiency means, that those are subject to interpretation. And if we're gonna about what may happen in the future, I also think the rubric, to whatever extent possible, needs to be codified. And I think we need to have faith in this body to be able to be nimble and make amendments to that. But my concern with not codifying the rubric itself is that we're all doing this for the right reasons. Somebody may come in after this administration and after this council turns over, and they may not, right? And so they could change the rubric, and it could happen in a silo with very little public input or alert to the public. So I do think, I feel very strongly that needs to be a piece of this legislation. And I think if we can get to that, then I think we might be able to find a middle ground between these two bills, which is at the end of the day my ultimate hope. So I mean, I guess that would be, if that's something that is feasible, I would like to talk through that, or to explore that further.
Is there a question for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to talk with the administration, but here you are.
Lawson Wajay-Surya, Chief of Staff. Just a couple of thoughts just to add on, and Ross has covered most of them, but thought to the to the last point, yes, we are open to putting more of the content of the rubric into the legislation. We absolutely can do that. What I want to say about that is where, to me, this discretion question comes in, that I think you're right. That's one of the things we're talking about here. The published nature of the rubric is what allows for the accountable discussion of, did it fit in or not? So somebody that requested something by FOIA and didn't see it in the public library could then use that information that has to be made public to come and say, you're not being transparent. And what was your reason? And did it fit within that rubric that we told you we would or would not post for those reasons? So it gives the tool. So it's not, what this is not saying is administration just gets to pick what goes or doesn't go. That's actually, in our opinion, that's not what this is saying. What it's saying is we have to tell you the why, and that you have that information. Everybody has that information about what our whys will be. And so if you have a concern about what we are, doing, then, and again, and I know he said this, but it feels really important to me, especially with the presentation from our subject matter expert, which was great as well, is that we're not, the FOIA process is what makes that document public. Because it is then in the hands of that requester with all the exemptions taken into place, and they can do with it whatever they would like. And this is just talking about that proactive step. So it's not an ability to hide documents because they can be FOIA'd. And if just one other person were to FOIA it, it would need to be posted. So I just wanted to clarify that, and maybe that's already been stated. Into the bad faith request, I did want to just add in that we do already navigate those. So I had a conversation with another council person who does feel like in her history, there have been bad faith, like, oh, is this person doing these nefarious things? Just as a request, we're dealing with something actively right now where might not be a bad faith request, but is the record that would be produced would not be in context. Anyway, so like those things are happening. So I think what Ross, I don't know if we need to clarify. What we're saying is, like, if I as an individual knew that just my request was going to go up automatically, I could use it in more bad faith, which is, I think, what you were saying, like that it is a tool where it could create that. We are already dealing with requests that that are people looking for dirt that's not actually there. And so where the request is the issue, not the content of the response, if you will, the responsive record, which is what the attorney also has suggested, of like, this is about responsive records, not just the act of requesting it.
So if that's the one, when you use that example of like a council member, they feel like, so I just want to be clear that, like, again, this is subject to interpretation. One woman's request for records may feel like another woman's personal attack or digging. So like, sure. I do want to name that, like, those words feels like are, I think, kind of some of the crux of this, right?
Sure.
And then two, if there are those, like, that would be helpful to know sort of what the N is on that, like what is the quantity on that, because
and I don't think it's tons and tons. It's a small number. Again, it's just that difference between responsive record versus the request itself being the potentially salacious part.
And we're still talking about people having to pay for that. So like, if it is a vendetta, like that's somebody who, has resources to pursue that vendetta, in addition to resources of time and wealth, to pursue that vendetta, because I know FOIA requests are not cheap. And then, like, back to the rubric, again, like, I appreciate, like, the administration's commitment to, like, the public publication of it, and then, using that as a guidepost for saying, like, this is why we didn't give it to you. But if the rubric right now as it stands says something like in the public interest, then, like, that's a very broad and subject to interpretation exception. And so I can feel better about all of this if we really start to extrapolate what those things mean, and in wherever possible codifying that. Again, knowing that I think we can be nimble, and that there will be things that come up now, but we can, that's why we meet, multiple times a month.
Yeah, agreed. And I do think asking for us to define it more totally makes sense. I think it gets to the very heart of why this is difficult. Same reason the paper, that Ms. Gibson's paper started as everything, and then exempted departments in order to avoid harm. So at some point there was a decision of, oh, there is the potential of harm, so we're going to exempt some things in order to avoid that. And we're just saying, well, one version of that discretion would be the whole department. Another version of that discretion would be not the whole department, because there are some things that go on in RPD that I think everybody should have access to. And so if we define it as, public interest, and we can get, more into the concrete words. So, yeah.
I definitely appreciate your willingness to work on that.
Thank you. And I know we have a lot more discussion on this paper. I just want to extend the opportunity for alternate Councilmember Breton. Looks like you had a comment or a question.
Yeah, I appreciate that I'm alternate, so I don't get to vote today, but did a bunch of research on this ahead of today's meeting just in case I was going to be needed. So I am interested to know in either of these cases, what type of after the fact accountability is available to us. In case of, for example, the government has discretion, what are the opportunities for the public to exercise after the fact accountability for that, to know how well you're using that discretion? I heard an example that I thought was pretty good of, I submitted a request and of course I got it, but I know it's not in the library, right? So obviously the request would be filled, but the fact that it's not in the library would be known to the requester. So I'd say that's one example where, the efficacy of the program can be judged. I mean, are there ways for someone to FOIA the FOIA request and say, can you give me a list of everything that didn't make the library? What are the after the fact accountability measures that are available?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we do have people FOIA lists of FOIA requests. That happens. I'm not sure the answer. I will talk with Julia. I think we could definitely, an easy thing would be an internal SOP to handle that sort of thing. I know the software that we're procuring, Just FOIA, has a really robust way of tracking conversations between the requester and the city. So I'm sort of wondering if there's a way for a requester to elevate their request within the software platform, something like that. I also know that the Just FOIA software provides a pretty extensive reporting dashboard. And so we haven't really thought through of which dashboards are internal, which are external, but I certainly think that we can have some sort of internal look of what was put in the library, what wasn't, and we can do some sort of reporting on that. For sure.
Yeah. But I do think that even in a case where we do allow discretion, we are going to want that accountability to be able to judge the quality of that discretion, right? So in the spirit of transparency, that would definitely be necessary. On the subject of these, kind of like these weaponized questions, one was something where somebody may have a legitimate question that sounds salacious, but they really did mean their question, and we're curious about just publishing that or broadcasting those questions just to the public. I understand that concern. Though you did say that you don't get that many of them now. But would you say that it is fair, though, that in other forums where people understand that they have the ability to post something and it will be broadcast publicly, that there are examples where people do inappropriate weaponized activity on forums like that, right? And that we have examples like that.
Yeah, totally. I think the comments, so we don't want our FOIA request library to become the comment section, right? And I think that is sort of the kernel of my concern. And to your point, Ms. Abubakar, I think you could, if you were if one were a truly bad faith requester, you could make a very cheap FOIA request in this way, where you just ask for my emails on a specific day containing a specific thing, and that would be like a $25 request or something. So yeah, I think we see a lot of that. Certainly as government officials, right? A lot of that sort of bad faith conversation in the public.
Yes, Ms. Gibson.
Thank you. My suggestion here is what I would like to see happen is that we vote forward with a recommendation for approval on paper 210 as amended, and that we put that in our December whole body vote. So allow more time for paper 240 to be amended. Now, look, at the end of the day, for me, the point of concern is the discretion. A paper with discretion is simply not transparent, because and I believe puts us open to more liability. Why certain requests are redacted and certain ones aren't. By providing a clear rubric where there is no discretion, provides transparency and more clarity across the board, and achieves the objective, as the constituent in the third shared, about this really being about crowdsourcing. You know, the intent of this paper is to bring radical transparency, and radical transparency is contradictory to saying we get to pick, or the CAO or whomever gets to pick, as it's been defined in the paper. It's simply not transparent. However, I am totally open to hearing, making amendments. I do think it was a big miss to publish a paper that did not have a rubric in it while it was included in the press release. Like, to me, that was concerning. But if the administration wants to come forward with amendments to its paper at our next meeting, my suggestion is that we move forward with ordinance 225-210 with a recommendation for approval, continue it to the December meeting, and allow us to revisit the discussion of paper 240.
Thank you. I don't think we're ready to forward this paper to full council. I just feel like we've spent 36 minutes and could probably 3 times that some of these tension points. And I think, and that's just with 4 people versus the 9. I had some additional questions. We also have the Just FOIA demonstration, which I think, I don't know, maybe would help flesh out some of the concerns that, I think are natural in this topic, but what's the will?
My recommendation would be that we continue both of these and wait and get some amendments and try to have some objective codification around the rubric, and see if we can come to some sort of middle ground with this, and do the same thing for both.
Do we want to, I know this isn't the order of the agenda, but while we are just in this conversation, go ahead and hit the demonstration of Just FOIA?
I defer to the body on the Just FOIA presentation. I mean, I've done, I'm familiar with it. If the public is familiar, I mean, the presentation has been uploaded. I think you mentioned potentially having that as a discussion at our OD meeting. I'm open to that too. At the end of the day, for me, the relevance of Just FOIA, the software that's been procured, in this discussion really is just about the cost. The software, as I understand it, makes it so that fulfilling FOIA requests is far more efficient. This is the reason why municipalities invest in this type of software. So, the original cost estimate of $300,000 or whatever it was, in my opinion, I questioned that, because at the same time, purchasing the software, which would streamline both redaction and facilitating those requests. So, I don't think that this discussion is about the whatever $100,000 difference between these 2 papers. I think it's negligible, and suffices to say, the administration has provided the estimate. It's not a non-biased. There's obviously going to be some bias in that estimate, given that we have 2 competing papers. And so I don't know that this discussion that we're having is about costs. And I think really the discussion is about whether or not we are open to radical transparency, or, do we want to pursue codifying some discretion and essentially, codifying discretion.
Thank you. I agree. I don't think cost is the question here. And for me, the presentation was just an opportunity to see, like, how would this work in practical terms? Because I do think some of the concerns of the weaponized FOIAs, and that's just reality we all have to accept when we are, in the public realm. And certainly those things happen in social media and other outlets all day long, all year long. If we could just spend, I would say, one more question, because I think another central, difference between these two papers are the departments that are exempted under -10, 210. I do think there has been really, meaningful reporting done around public concerns, that would not have happened if, like, RPD, as an example, was exempted. And so I just wonder, like, practically, how would that work in a situation where, like the protest, different timelines of who was making calls and emails that went back and forth? Like, what was your rationale for excluding those? Thanks.
So I can say for me, the original paper, as it was introduced, had an exemption for any time you're FOIAing information and you're the subject. So that was already, in the original paper, which basically strips out a good number, I believe, of the total volume. The reason for further doing that was because the administration came forward with the cost of $350,000 for staff, and the hope was to essentially streamline it to get the cost down to where I hope that the body would find it more digestible. To be clear, I think in this moment in time, I would love to have it be, complete as I originally introduced the paper. But my first order of business was essentially to provide more transparency in this building. And the dialogue that we've been having as a city as of late has to do with P-card expenses and the issuing of checks in a timely manner, and fuel costs and the surplus and contracts. These are the things that the city residents are really focused on, how our finance department works. So for me, it was, how can we take an important first step and open to making amendments to address the concerns on the table. So that was the objective. And again, in order for this to be transparent, it can't be at our discretion. And so I was looking for a way of addressing the concerns that were highlighted in a way that ensured that there was full transparency on communications that are happening here in City Hall.
Thank you. Any other comments? No. Okay, so do I have any motions on these papers?
I motion to continue both papers to the November Government Operations Committee and allow for times for amendment.
Second.
I'm sorry, I'm going to vote no on this one.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
The committee is voting on the motion to continue ordinance 2025-210 to the November Governmental Operations Standing Committee. Ms. Gibson?
No.
Vice Chair Abubakar?
Aye.
Chair Jordan?
Aye.
That motion has been approved. The committee is also voting on the motion to continue ordinance 2025-240 to the November Governmental Operations Standing Committee meeting. Ms. Gibson?
Oh, so I'm saying the same thing on this? No.
Vice Chair Abubakar?
Aye.
Chair Jordan?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If we can move on to our next paper.
The next paper is item 3, ordinance 2025-211, to amend city code concerning general requirements of the open data portal to prohibit charging fees for requesting information required to be posted in the open data portal pursuant to section by adding there in a new section concerning required data sets for the purpose of requiring publication of certain data sets in the open data portal. That paper is before the committee.
Thank you. Would the patron like to introduce the paper?
Thank you. So the objective on this paper is to provide right now in City Code Section 2-1352 is a section that is specific to the Open Data Portal, which is a web portal to access various data sets. The current section of the code does not specify what is included in that open data portal or any of the specifics within any of the data sets. And so the objective on this paper was to provide a more comprehensive data set specific to contract and procurement information. So and the original version of the paper included some historical data as well as kind of moving forward data. The administration came with a cost estimate of, I think it was around $200,000 to put in the historical data. I, of course, question the accuracy of that estimate, but, and again, in an attempt to ensure that there was not an obstacle to support on this paper, amended the paper to remove the historical data, and that is the amended paper that we're looking at today. I do want to highlight that the administration, over time since this paper has been introduced, has been adding. So in the open data portal, the data set, and this was as of, I believe, maybe 3 weeks ago, did include the actual contracted amount of the contracts that were in effect. I appreciated seeing that. And the city released a press release about including the other data sets. And so I am thankful for the support of the city administration in supporting the effort and the intent of the paper as it's been defined.
Thank you. Let's open it up to public comment, please.
Is there anyone in the chamber who wishes to speak in opposition to this paper? Is there anyone in the chamber who wishes to speak in support of this paper? Please state your name for the record. You can proceed with your comments.
Hello again. My name is Quentin Robbins. I'm the chair of Richmond for All. You know, people in politics are complicated. Despite what I think of as a little bit of phony baloney on the last one, I'm very excited that there's some unity on this contract data. I think it's very important to get this information out there. I think Richmond for All as an organization has had a lot of concerns about temporary staff, the utilization of temporary staffing in the city and how much money we're spending on that, as opposed to well-paying public sector jobs with benefits, so that, you know, when we spend money on our workforce, that it is both high quality and the people that, you know, really run this city are getting paid what they deserve and put food on the table. So really appreciate this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone online that wishes to provide public comment?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, bringing it back to committee.
I motion to forward this paper with a recommendation for approval to the full body.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you call the vote, please?
The committee is voting on the motion to forward ordinance 2025-211 to council with the recommendation to approve. Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abubakar?
Aye.
Chair Jordan?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you. So I believe that brings us to the conclusion of our papers. We move on to presentations.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be with you all, council members. Laura Thomas, Director of the Office of Sustainability. Excited to be here with you. Donna Lexi will be presenting. I'm just going to do a little information up front. And we are excited to share some information about JET, the Joint Energy Team, for our internal staff. This team was created in FY24 and it's composed of over 100 city employees from across every single city department. And we don't often celebrate the things we're doing well. And this team has quickly become one of the most high-performing teams in this organization. So when it was created, it was developed by the CAO and DCAOs at that time, and again has over 100 internal decision makers from all levels of the organization. In that short period of time since it's been created, you can see this list of wins here. This team has helped the city save hundreds of thousands of dollars already. We've received national awards and recognition. We are achieving our climate goals and ensuring we're creating operational efficiencies and improvements. We're working on a change management process through this. And in change management, the unit of change is one human. So we're working on an individual basis to make sure that we are achieving our operational goals. We're continuing to support Mayor Avula's MAP and MVP. We have been called silo breakers, and that's quite an honor to us as we are working to address some of the traditional barriers to interdepartmental work. And overall, it's just a really lovely high-performance local government example. So in short, the OOS is thrilled to be supporting these outcomes on behalf of our community. And in addition, I wanted to kick us off because I know she would not give herself the credit for this, but she certainly deserves it. I'll now hand it over to the indefatigable Donna Lexi. She's our energy program manager and an incredible asset to this organization. And she, as Mayor Avula recently said at the Virginia Clean Energy Summit, has saved personally the organization hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you for having me, Dawn Alexi, Energy Program Manager. I'm thrilled to be able to talk about the Joint Energy Team. As Laura said, we've been hard at work for over 2 years now to get this stood up, saving the dollars and providing the long-term economic, environmental, and social benefits is just part of it. But really breaking down the silos is its greatest value. Building the culture of shared responsibility. The priority pillars that we're addressing in all of our work are a thriving city hall, getting things done. The model of efficiency that Laura was speaking to is ingrained in everything we do. And the outcomes are the thriving and sustainable built environment. So I'll tell you more about that as I dig into our projects. As you can see, we spend a lot of money on utilities. Lots of strategies to reduce costs are already in the works and have been for a while. But to realize our goals, our long-term goals, we really need aggressive and strategic actions. Some of those are things like taking better advantage of our demand response program, LED retrofits everywhere, energy performance contracting, energy benchmarking integrated with our CIP budgeting, and submetering to better understand our energy use at a systems level. So this is the type of thinking that really takes interdepartmental hard work, and that's what JET is doing. We base our goals and deliverables on the fiscal year. So with over 100 decision makers across these 5 committees, we provide the foundation to build that interagency stakeholder engagement and develop the annual action plans. And in the past year, lots of goals were met, as you can see. Some of the highlights are our standardized asset nomenclature across computer maintenance systems allows the organization across departments and divisions to ensure consistency in reporting and tracking of maintenance activities going forward. And that's going to facilitate our asset management process. Lots of fleet EV initiatives that you'll hear more about. And our energy management administrative regulation that was just adopted in the spring sets organization-wide expectations for energy conservation. A standard of efficiency is what we're working toward. In terms of spotlighting outcomes, as I mentioned, facilitating the EV transition has been a big success this past year. Worked very hard with procurement and facilities and fleet and DPU to get 5 holistic EV charging contracts for departments to use. Also, our EV policy formalizes requirements for EV drivers and infrastructure for our fleet vehicles. We joined a Virginia Clean Cities cohort. Actually, it was a national cohort alongside Virginia Clean Cities. We were one of 8 cities across the country that got best practices on fleet charging, and so they developed that flyer that's going to go into our fleet coordinator packets. And you can see the results. Number 16 for our green fleet through NAFA, and best electric vehicle policy is in North America this last year. Also, fostering the energy conscious culture is a big part of JET. It really is about culture change, that you can create all the policies you want, but as you know, unless the folks understand them and know how to operationalize them, they don't get very far. So between educating our staff on the new administrative regulation and bringing awareness and showcasing our projects in the quarterly energy awareness bulletin have been very effective. Also, October is Energy Awareness Month, so it's the perfect month to be talking about this publicly. We've been showcasing our new policy at in-person events, all staff emails, social media, and the quarterly newsletter, and then publicly through the RVA Green newsletter, we're able to talk about our wins. Our renewable energy portfolio, we're making a lot of progress there towards our long-term goals. Currently, we are at 56% of our municipal electricity comes from renewable sources. And very importantly, we finally have our first city-owned on-site solar installation at TB Smith. Really looking into fast-tracking that trajectory with many more wins in the near future. And our outdoor lighting LED retrofits. We've been converting our street lights since 2016, but it is slow with limited funding. But on the flip side, our exterior building lighting conversions through general services, they have been very effective at prioritizing that because of that quick ROI. So they're at 100%. We do need to make sure that there's more funding for Parks and Rec and our parking decks and DPU facilities. On the community-facing side, as Laura mentioned, most of this work is internally facing, but it does touch the community. So we're leading by example here. We're continuing the internal projects that institutionalize sustainability across all departments, demonstrating our accountability and measurable progress. But on the public side, even as the national ideology shifts, Richmond can continue to lead with bold, practical action. We innovate with smart technologies, deploying tools such as energy-efficient streetlights, electric vehicles, advanced building controls to improve operations and reduce costs. I want to just highlight a project that we're doing with Veridian, a local nonprofit, our housing department, and the Healthy Homes Initiative, and RRHA to help prioritize cost-effective retrofits to reduce energy burden to our low-income housing communities. I was asked to provide a curbside EV policy update. The Office of Sustainability has established an internal working group with the right-of-way team and the Transportation Engineering Division to develop a policy and permit application for residents in need of on-street EV charging facilities. So that policy is being developed now, and it is the model that many other cities have used to address the need for on-street EV charging while protecting the city's assets and access to the public right-of-way. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Laura to discuss the sustainable design standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. And then the last item that we were asked to add to this conversation was an update on the sustainable design standards. You may recall in November 24, the sustainable design standards were adopted by City Council and are now part of municipal code. And so this is now the overall process by which city construction projects should adhere to. Specifically, there are thresholds of criteria for qualifying projects. We are working to ensure that staff has additional support. Again, going back to change management being a unit of one person, we have to make sure that they have the ability, the desire, the skills to be able to implement this program. So I'm actually very happy to be announcing to you all that the city of Richmond was just recently awarded as one of 8 cities internationally to participate in the Urban Land Institute's Net Zero cohort. This is the 5th cohort of the program. Again, 8 cities from throughout the world. And what we'll be doing is receiving technical assistance to implement the sustainable design standards more efficiently within the organization. So they're going to afford us a technical advisory panel that we'll likely be putting together in the spring with the Urban Land Institute of Virginia. And we'll bring in experts from locally as well as across the country to help run an advisory panel to answer some questions and solve some problems for us to help advance the implementation of the SDSs. And we'll be working with the comms team and have some more public announcement of that award shortly. So lastly, to close, we just hope that JET continues to be a key success story around not only a pillar of a sustainable built environment, but of a thriving city hall that gets things done. We're obviously applying for grants and winning them and seeking funding to get this work done, such as our LED conversion process that was mentioned earlier. We're also in the process of standing up a clean energy revolving fund where we'll be inputting dollars to advance green energy efficiency and renewable projects. An example of funding is the IRS direct pay rebates. We're receiving around $62,000 as rebates for recent installation of EV charging stations. So that money will go into the Clean Energy Revolving Fund where we can strategize and prioritize how we advance additional projects. And the ultimate goal is to ensure that we're receiving enough energy efficiency back into our utility billing that we actually grow that fund over time. But we'll continue to build on those successes and achieve the bold visions that we set out in RVA Green 2050, which is now 28% complete. And with that, we will close and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I definitely have some questions, but I'll defer to my colleagues first. Susan. Okay, great. So yes, really appreciate all the great work that's done. If we go back to slide 13, how many folks have used training and tools? This terrific opportunity for LEED and Envision certifications. For those who aren't familiar with LEED and Envision, can you just let the public know what those 2 categories are, and then let us know how many people have actually, how many of our staff have taken advantage of that?
Absolutely. So LEED and Envision are certification programs for different types of built infrastructure. So LEED is specifically for vertical construction, so buildings, and Envision is more for horizontal construction like right-of-way projects, public utilities, et cetera. So they're national and international standards that are used all the time. A great example of a LEED building, LEED Platinum, is the new CoStar building. So really excited to see that. This is again just relevant to internal projects because we have the authority for that. We have last year, I think we trained, the numbers are going to be slightly off, but approximately 10 staff members from different agencies within the organization on both LEED and Envision. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to sponsor more folks again in the coming fiscal year.
I think in our prior presentation, you had indicated the project costs where the sustainable design standards kick in. Can you remind us what that threshold is?
Yeah, so it's different based on what type of project. So for horizontal infrastructure, it's around $50 million because these are very large projects like new wastewater treatment plants. And then for other projects, it's $5 million. And so we're working on making sure that we have a way to identify when the standards have to kick in. and then moving that forward from a project management standpoint. In general, it also applies to every project conceptually. So we still want folks, even if we're not asking you to actually get LEED certified, we still want you to follow the steps in the process so that it's applied to all of the projects. It might not just be the certification on the back end, which can require extensive documentation, project management. So we're trying to make sure that we're analyzing the right return on investment for those size projects.
Absolutely, and there is a tipping point there, but I do hope that a lot of the projects that touch our constituents most directly day to day are going to be below that $5 million threshold, and so I hope that these standards are making the way throughout our organization because they're important, and your staff is capable of assisting, I think, in guiding that work. So is there something that needs to be done legislatively to further encourage that implementation?
I think now that we have this ULI opportunity, our staff, my team is going to be working on prioritizing that at the moment. So if we're going to be having technical assistance to the tune of about $35,000 to do a technical advisory panel, that panel can in the spring answer a lot of the questions for us about where are the barriers to implementation, how can we increase it. So I think we're on a path to get through that process and then reevaluate where we're at.
Okay, great. And then last question. Obviously, this is within our wheelhouse, right? Within our family of influence, our sphere of influence, but people across the city are struggling with energy costs. And I know we've got green grant programs, we've got ways, I think to help with education and outreach when it comes to, low and no cost measures for energy efficiency. But one thing that has been repeated several times is the idea of on the bill financing through our, DPU customers to help them afford those maybe larger cost changes like swapping out, a gas furnace for electric and likewise. Has there been any movement on that?
Yes, actually. So we've been working really hard internally to align some visions between DPU and the OOS. Scott Morris and myself have been in an ongoing conversation, and we're actually getting close to kind of a final proposal about how we partner together and what kinds of programs we put together. So I think there's an opportunity for another GovOps presentation when we get that, get those matters agreed upon, and so we can come back to this body and say how we're, across the board decarbonizing our utility system. I think there's an incredible need for it right now. The federal programs are being eliminated. LIHEAP, for example, is no longer, and there are tremendous gaps in funding energy efficiency programs for our community members. Donna and team are leading several projects like the Energy Efficiency Block Grant, where we're partnering with Healthy Homes to do energy efficiency upgrades, but there aren't a whole ton of services still available to folks, and there's a significantly growing increase in need for that. There's a recent energy burden study that was released by C3, a local nonprofit, that examines some of those energy burden rates and where they're their highest in the community. If there's anything you want to add.
Thank you. I appreciate that and all the great work that you do. Any other comments, committee? Okay. Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Johnson, we're excited to see you here today. Welcome to GovOps.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Committee. I'm Gail Johnson, Director of General Services. Thanks for the opportunity to share some of the wonderful things we're doing in Fleet with the help of our JET team, of course. I'm introduce Jason Art, who's our Fleet Operations Manager, who'll be doing the presentation today. And once he's done, then I will come back and give an update on our outstanding audits.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Jason Arndt, Fleet Operations Manager. So I'm thankful for this opportunity to talk about our Green Fleet Transition Plan. And as Don alluded to, we did rank 16th out of the top 50 for the North America, and we also received a secondary award as Best Electric Vehicle Policy for 2025. So meet the fleet. This is the team behind every mile that city drives. We are cradle to grave, acquisition, maintenance, replacement. We handle everything from the time it's ordered to the time that we surplus it. I have technicians that many of my technicians are automotive safety excellence certified, which means ASC, as you may have heard. We have 90% of our technicians are certified for EV. We have Ford certified technicians, which allows us to do warranty work for Ford and be reimbursed from Ford for that work. We also have two in now that we brought in from a high school auto shop. It's a great opportunity for us to grow our own talent. So some of the priority pillars here, thriving city government, we're promoting continuous improvement. We're also championing a strong shared vision. Thriving economy. We make every effort to partner with local and minority-owned vendors. Thriving a sustainable built environment. We are actively working towards the net zero emissions. The decision tree, which was actually developed with the JET team. So actually first, our decision is going to be, do we actually even need the vehicle to be replaced? And then secondly on that is, based off of the capability, is it something that we can possibly downsize, make it more efficient? We also will evaluate vendors, parts. We will also, like I said, check the capability. Does it need to push snow? What is the capability that piece of equipment needs? Very first, before we get into this decision tree. And then as you see, we will look at EV where it's possible. Right now, the infrastructure is being put into place, so we are moving in that direction. We will use hybrid as a bridge option. Alternative fuels, not as much available. We're hoping to see hydrogen come out as an alternative fuel here in the future, mostly for our heavy equipment applications. And then obviously you'll see that we go to gasoline and diesel. These are the fuel trends since 2022. You'll see 2022 was very low. That was the city coming out of COVID. But what you can see is the trend for us to be decreasing our fuel usage over the last 3 years. And the reasons for this is because of lower emissions, EV, also just replacing vehicles themselves, and then the anti-idling policy that the city has brought into place. Some of the pros and cons of electric vehicles. So electric vehicles are more expensive. They can be 50 to 75% more than an internal combustion engine. Their resale value is not quite as much. They have a shorter life expectancy, shorter life cycle that we're seeing right now. As the technology is getting better, that is actually improving. But the pros, so they're much quieter. They require very little maintenance. Basically just a preventive maintenance every 6 months, check the tires and the brakes. It's very simple. And then obviously we'll get the reduced fuel costs, and we will get the the ability to move towards zero net emissions. These are some of the recent fleet additions since 2022. We have added 48 hybrids, 25 electric vehicles. Up on the left, you'll see the Mach-E, Mustang Mach-E. On the right, you'll see that's the hybrid police interceptor. And then down there at the bottom, that is the Ford Lightning. We've also, since this presentation, added a e-transit van. So one thing I want to make perfectly clear is, as we replace vehicles, the technology is much better, much more fuel efficient. So even if we are doing gas or diesel, it is lowering our emissions and lowering our fuel costs. Challenges for our outlook moving forward. We did lose the EV tax credit as of September 30th. There are organizations that are still offering some kind of tax credit or some kind of credit like Virginia Clean Cities. We are looking into those at all times. Right now for EV, it's mostly just light duty vehicles. The medium and heavy duty market, just there's not as much availability. Obviously, there are companies moving forward. Today, I met with International. They are moving forward with a medium truck line, EVs. So I'll be interested to see what that looks like moving forward. We have limits to our facility. Part of our facility was actually built back into the 1950s. So our infrastructure moving forward to be able to handle EV and possibly hydrogen applications is something that will need to be addressed at some point. Moving forward, we're making responsible and data-driven decisions when it comes to fleet replacement. That actually concludes if you guys have any questions.
No, thank you. That was excellent so far. Just,
Thank you.
Proceed.
We were able to have our first audit.
I'm
that
sorry,
was-
just a moment. Madam Clerk, do you mind putting the presentation back up? Q2 slide 9. Thank you.
General Services had our first audit, which was for the fuel card program. We had 9 recommendations that were accepted from the city auditor's office. And to date, we have been able to close 5 of them. We still have 4 outstanding. Recommendation number 1 was to create a fuel card policy. We have created that policy, submitted it back to the auditor's office for review. So hopefully we can get that closed out. The second recommendation was to look at enhancements to our current fuel company software and others. We have identified enhancements to the current fuel company software, which is Quarles, that can help us put a few more controls in place for fuel card usage. We've also looked at some others. Haven't found any that's fiscally viable yet to get rid of what we currently have. Recommendation number 4 addressed training of fuel card users. We've developed a training module and we've worked with HR to put that on our Learn software platform. So that should be going live in November. And lastly, we were asked, recommendation number 9, to create a log for our fuel trucks and our fuel tanks that is dispersing fuel on a single fuel card that may be going into, say, a gas can as opposed to a vehicle. So we're currently working on that fuel log, and we'll have that presented to the auditor's office for review by the next couple of weeks, by November 1st.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Committee, any questions for Fleet?
I just had one question. So with regards to the fuel SOP revisions, so is it documented how much has been, perhaps was overspent due to irregularities in how the fuel policy had been applied? I'm, thinking ahead as we think about our budget. I wanted to see if there was any clarity in terms of the rough number in terms of overspending that might have happened related to fuel.
So I think once we get the policy approved and in place, we'll be able to do a better comparison to our overall fuel cost. We should be able to see a reduction there. Cannot make a definite that reduction is a result of misuse of, the fuel from the previous cost that we've spent on fuel, but it'll give us an idea that policy is doing something to help with the reduction in the fuel usage that could account somewhat for some misuse in the fuel.
So in the budget that your team prepares, will that be identified in the budget that is submitted to administration as part of your budget development process?
So we don't budget for misused fuel. We budget for fuel use based on fuel costs and historical fuel usage based on the number of vehicles we have. So I won't say we will reduce our fuel budget for the sake of this policy. We still will use the same calculation as we've always used for setting a budget for fuel cost in the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I think maybe, I don't know if our city auditor could answer to it, but I mean, was there an amount that was identified in the audit of spending that hopefully we will not see occur in the next budget?
Yeah, in the audit, I'd have to look at the exact number we put in there is questionable, but the key is that it's a sample in the audit, where there are a lot of data. I think they just showed a reduction of $250,000 in quantity of fuel from one year to the next, occurring over the period of the audit. And like she mentioned, some of that is accounted for in the audit itself, the controls you put in place, the monitoring you put in place, and some of that is accounted for different reasons. So in our audit, we sample, risk-based sampling, to determine what the problem is and what needs to be resolved. And then the controls, the monitoring, the policies, the data-driven approach that needs to be taken will, get to the savings for the overall program. But we can only use, and we use a risk for our audit to identify problems, like a random type of sample.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ali, state your name and title for the record.
Riyad Ali, City Auditor.
Thank you.
So just, I wasn't going to ask this question, but now it piqued my interest a little bit. I would assume with the onboarding of more EV vehicles and hybrid vehicles that year over year, we will see a reduction in the fuel costs and what we're budgeting for those fuel costs, in addition to whatever savings we may find from the new SOPs and creating efficiency in that way, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then how many vehicles do we have in our fleet overall? And then how many of those are, like, what percentage of those are EVs or hybrids?
I think we have about 2,300.
So as of today, we actually have 1,977 vehicles, 25 of which are EV.
Okay.
And then 48 of which are hybrid.
And then my last question is, you spoke to a little bit about the, I have a brother who's a certified mechanic, so he talks a lot about the highly specialized nature of working on EVs and hybrids, and just because you're working with high voltage equipment. I would imagine that's a pretty in-demand field. How are you able to source and pipeline new talent for those technicians?
So it's unbelievable that I actually don't have a talent problem right now. I actually have, I'm just about fully staffed with capable technicians. So, but I have pipelines through colleges that are actually producing these bachelor programs in automotive, which are focusing on EV and alternative fuels. Because I mean, that's the other part of this equation. It's not just all about EV, it's also the alternative fuels. Hydrogen is going to be something that we use in the future. So we have pipelines for that. We're always working with the local schools and schools beyond, but then training ourselves. We have an excellent program through Ford, where Ford gives us the opportunity, since we have so many Ford vehicles, we actually get their training for free. Once the technicians do the modules, they actually go to the Ford warranty training in person and get certified for that. So the EV is part of that as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add to that having had the opportunity to do a fleet tour, I would recommend anyone. You don't have a problem with talent because you run an amazing division. Right. And people like working there. They feel valued. You could tell there's real camaraderie. So I'd love to brag about you guys. And I wish people saw all the departments and units in the city that run like yours because you're not an anomaly. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Getting there. All right. We have really run the gamut of topics today. Okay, I believe we're on to board vacancy reports.
Good afternoon, Chair Jordan, Ms. Abubakar, Ms. Gibson, Pamela Nichols, Council Management Analyst. The vacancy report before you captures current and projected vacancies through February of 2026. We really don't have that much to discuss today. For the Clean City Commission, we had a vacancy for a 2nd district representative as well as for a 4th district representative, and we did receive applications, and of course, we have received support for both of those individuals. You will notice that the report also highlights some appointments that has been made by the mayor, but it does not require approval by council or this committee. And then moving down to the Sister Cities Commission, there has been a request from the council representative who serves that this committee will consider continuing that vacancy until January to allow for further discussions about the future of the Sister Cities Commission. And so today, the committee is just asked to vote on the 2 applications for the Clean City Commission.
Okay, thank you, noted. So can I have a motion to take these up as a block? We will continue Sister Cities and vote in the Clean City Commission members.
So moved.
Second.
The committee is voting on the board's recommendations as stated. Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abubakar?
Aye.
Chair Jordan?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm hoping that next year we will have our calendar completely outlined to the extent we can and not have to make adjustments, but that's not where we are right now. So wanted to go over the next couple of meeting dates just to make sure we're being considerate of holidays, schedules, and staff's time. Mr. Perkins, can you run us through the options, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, members. In reviewing the schedule for your November and December meetings, both are currently scheduled for the days just before holidays. And so we have discussed your availability. And if you'll refer to a memo I shared with you, we can also review it now. There is essentially 2 dates we looked at for November, either November 12th or November 19th. And then in December, we looked at a number of times within the date of December 10th. I will flag that December 12th, although a Wednesday, is also the day directly after a holiday, Veterans Day. And so our clerk's office colleagues will be processing new legislation because also the just day before that is Monday, November 10th, a council meeting. And so just to flag that for folks, that may limit our chance to review referred legislation. If something's introduced on Monday night, Tuesday is not an open business day, and so Wednesday would be the day right after. So just naming that, so in case folks may forget how the calendar is set there. So in conclusion, based on what the information we gathered from y'all over the last couple of days on your availability, Wednesday the 12th may be a good option. Perhaps the 2 p.m. slot may be better, just to give yourselves a bit more time to look things over as they're introduced Monday night. And then on December 10th, it looks like either the 1 o'clock or the 2 o'clock. Typically, this committee meets at 1 o'clock, so that's part of why we may suggest that. So again, that seems to be the best dates for your November and December meetings. Thank you.
Okay, any reactions from the committee?
I am board with 2 p.m. on November the 12th, and either the 1 p.m. or the 2 p.m. time works for me on December the 10th.
November 12th is fine for me. December 10th is not, but I have full faith in alternate Breton if that would work for him.
Alternate Breton? Okay. Any further reaction from the clerk's office? Or otherwise?
No, Madam Chair. That's fine.
Okay. Mr. Perkins, I think we will proceed with the 12th, 2 o'clock, December 10th at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may, Madam Chair, currently scheduled for your November meeting is a presentation from the Public Utilities and Service Commission on their annual report, as well as a report from DPU on the combined sewer overflow system. Thank you.
Okay, and what do we have on deck for the 10th?
For December, you're currently scheduled to hear from our DIT director, Mr. Todd, about cybersecurity and protection of data.
Okay, thank you. And then just wanted to note that, did we get a report from HR?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, we in fact received 2 reports. So we received a vacancy and turnover report, which covered the first quarter of fiscal year 26. I'm happy to summarize if you'd like. We had also received a report on overtime from Human Resources Department.
Okay, and those reports can be found uploaded on Legistar?
Yes, ma'am. I believe so.
Okay, and just as a reminder, this committee typically gets presentations on the HR reports from the director of HR. Our director, we wish him well, but he has moved on to another opportunity. So as that department is transitioning, they asked to do their presentation in January, but submit the report on time so that should we have questions or want to have any staff members come, we can reach out to them now. Any comments on the HR report? Okay, my last request for staff would be, I think we had discussed earlier on for the audit updates, having a formal slide so that when we're reviewing it meeting to meeting, it always appears in the same format. If we could create that slide and make sure that people coming to present populate it, I think it'd be useful for us to review the information. Anything else for the good of the order before we close out? Okay, this October meeting of government operations is concluded.
Turning into doozies.